On the quiet outskirts of the city, stood a grand Japanese-style mansion, built in the mid-20th century. Inside lived Kazuo Tanaka, a wealthy man who owned countless treasures but carried a deep emptiness in his heart. His days were long and silent, his footsteps echoing through empty halls. Only one soul kept him company, Taro, a loyal Shiba Inu with bright, watchful eyes. Taro was more than a pet, he was family, a silent guardian who understood his master's loneliness better than any human could. Yet even with Taro by his side, Kazuo often felt the weight of solitude pressing on him like an endless winter. He longed for laughter, for the warmth of another presence, something his wealth could never buy. And then came Akari, a poor little girl with worn sandals and a gentle heart. At first, she lingered by the gates, shyly offering scraps of bread to Taro. Slowly, her kindness drifted past the stone walls and into the old man's life. For the first time in many years, Kazuo smiled, not because of riches, but because of the simple joy of companionship. In Akari's laughter, and in Taro's loyalty, he found the family he thought he had lost forever. As the quiet days passed, Kazuo Tanaka felt a calm clarity settling within him. He knew his time was drawing near, and though his mansion was filled with silence, his heart no longer trembled with fear. Beside him was Taro, the faithful companion who had never once left his side. One evening, under the soft glow of a lantern, Kazuo sat at his desk. The paper before him seemed to carry the weight of his entire life. With a steady hand, he began to write his will. Each stroke of the brush was deliberate, graceful, as if he had already made peace with destiny. When the last word was written, he sealed the parchment with red wax, his family crest pressed firmly into it. No one knew the contents. For Kazuo had chosen to keep his final wishes secret, hidden in silence. The next morning, dressed in his formal kimono, Kazuo handed the sealed will to his trusted lawyer. His eyes carried no regret, only a quiet serenity, as though he had already entrusted his life's meaning to Taro, the dog who had been his truest family. When the day of farewell finally arrived, the Tanaka mansion was filled with incense, soft chants, and the hushed voices of relatives who had gathered from near and far. Kazuo Tanaka, the once stern yet gentle master of the house, had departed peacefully. After the ceremony, the family assembled in the main tatami room, where the air carried a mix of solemnity and subtle curiosity. The lawyer, adjusting his spectacles, placed the sealed document before him. Everyone leaned in ever so slightly, as if the paper itself held the secret to a hidden treasure. With deliberate care, the seal was broken, and the will was read aloud. At first, the words flowed as expected. But then came the unusual clause. All estate and possessions are hereby entrusted to Taro, my loyal companion. Whoever Taro chooses to stay with shall be the rightful heir. A silence swept the room. For a moment, only the creak of the tatami floor could be heard. Then, a cousin cleared his throat, another aunt adjusted her kimono nervously, and someone even tried to stifle a laugh. It was not anger that filled the air, but rather a strange mix of bewilderment and amusement. One thing was certain, this was no ordinary inheritance. The destiny of the Tanaka fortune now rested in the paws of one very calm, very fluffy dog. From that day onward, the once quiet Tanaka mansion turned into a stage for the most unusual competition. And the judge? None other than Taro, the dog with the calmest expression in all of Japan. One uncle arrived with the finest marbled beef, bowing deeply as he offered it on a porcelain plate, only for Taro to sniff politely and walk away. Another aunt tried her best to brush Taro's fur until it gleamed, smiling nervously as if she were attending an imperial tea ceremony. Not to be outdone, the ladies eagerly jumped into the competition. Some rushed into the kitchen, kneading dough and shaping pastries. Others were busy frying, stewing, or sautéing. Sweet dishes, savory dishes, every flavor imaginable, turning the whole event into a true culinary festival. The grand kitchen of the mansion, usually so spacious, suddenly felt like a bustling market, filled with clattering pots and pans as if even the utensils wanted to escape. When everything was finally ready, the dishes were beautifully decorated and neatly arranged in a row, awaiting their most important judge, Taro. The SHIBA INU strolled proudly like a head judge, sniffing here, glancing there. But then walked away with absolute indifference, not even a tiny bite taken. Meanwhile, the husbands watched from the sidelines, chuckling to each other. Funny, never once have we seen our wives make these kinds of dishes at home. In the end, all the dog-rejected dishes turned into a feast for everyone else. People laughed, shared bites, and teased one another, the lively kitchen ringing with joy and laughter, almost like celebrating New Year's Day. Soon, the scene grew almost comical. Cousins squatted on the tatami floor, dangling treats, calling out Taro-chan, over here. While others tried belly rubs, or even improvised lullabies. The dog, however, remained serenely unmoved, as if he knew he now held the fate of an entire household in his paws. It was not malice that filled the room, but laughter, awkwardness, and a curious sense of warmth. For the first time in years, the Tanaka family was united, if only by the shared mission of earning the affection of one very discerning Shiba Inu. The long-awaited day finally arrived. The entire family gathered in the spacious tatami room, the air heavy with both curiosity and greed. At the center of the room, the lawyer held the envelope containing the will, preparing to read it once more. Everyone held their breath. When the will was read aloud, the room fell into complete silence. In it, there was only a single line for the most important clause: all estate and possessions are hereby entrusted to Taro, my loyal companion. Whoever Taro chooses to stay with shall be the rightful heir. Mouths fell open. A few whispered in disbelief, others chuckled nervously. For a moment, no one knew whether to laugh, cry, or crawl toward the Shiba Inu immediately. Taro, completely unfazed, stretched lazily, wagged his tail, and looked around the room as if savoring the attention. Then, with his little steps, he walked past the richly dressed relatives, ignoring their frantic calls and extravagant gestures. Until he finally trotted towards Akira, who sat quietly at the corner, neither bribing nor begging, just smiling warmly at him, and in that instant, everyone knew, the verdict was sealed. From that day on, the mansion was no longer a lonely, echoing space. Akira did not live there by herself. Her modest family was invited to move in, not as masters of the estate, but as its caretakers. The old staff who had served Mr. Tanaka for decades stayed as well, their loyalty rewarded with a place in the household. Together, they brought warmth back into the halls that once felt cold and silent. Taro, the Shiba Inu, walked proudly through the gardens, as if he were both guardian and judge of this new family harmony. He would spend afternoons playing with Akira, napping beside her books, or leading her on small adventures around the estate. And whenever laughter filled the air, it seemed the spirit of Kazuo Tanaka himself was smiling, finally at peace. The relatives, though initially disappointed, gradually accepted the outcome. They visited from time to time, and many even confessed they felt relieved not to be burdened by the weight of managing such a vast inheritance. In the end, what remained was not rivalry, but a curious sense of gratitude. The true legacy was never about gold, land, or status. It was about loyalty, kindness, and the unexpected ways love can bring new life to even the emptiest of houses. And so, dear friends, we come to the end of this unusual tale. A story where a grand estate, a secret will, and a loyal dog wove together a lesson far greater than inheritance. Perhaps Mr. Kazuo Tanaka knew all along that wealth fades, titles are forgotten, but kindness lingers. It lingers in the laughter of a young girl, in the proud steps of a Shiba Inu, and in the quiet smile of a man who left not just a house, but a home. In the end, Mr. Kazuo's true inheritance was never his mansion or his wealth. It was love, loyalty, and kindness. And perhaps that's the only legacy worth leaving behind. So, whenever you see a Shiba Inu strut proudly down the street, perhaps you'll smile, and remember this story of loyalty, love, and a curious little inheritance. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Every view, every heart that connects is a little light that keeps us going. See you again in the next story from ThePawlight.